Atocha Global Analytics. Please like and subscribe.
Greetings, salutations, and howdy to you all. KT here. As always, I want to remind you that Atocha Global Analytics was created to provide insight and foresight into the street-level impacts of macroeconomics, real estate and finance trends, and the policies that shape them. So this video is not really new content, but a summary of what we've covered previously throughout the series. So I'll add a little context and spots, but really it's just a summary. So here we go. Here's the steps. First step, as I called component number one, go find lot sales during the time frame when there was a normalized market and new home sales as a package price for homes at that same time frame. Divide the lot sale price by the new home package price to create a ratio. The reality is that when these value increases outstrip the increases in the true value anchor of home prices, which is construction costs, the lot prices ended up skewed way up out of proportion based on historic norms. And again, everything will revert or to the mean or median, so it will come back down just like a balloon deflating. So when value increases the way they have, leaving real construction costs lagging initially anyway, two things are the repository of those increases. The underlying land, which is why I referenced the normalized value of the lots, and builders' margins, which end up a bit temporary because, as we know, materials increase significantly due to appreciation and shortages, etc. All right, number two, the second component was go find new home and other related costs now. If you get these as described in video number 2, you will know what is the greatest anchor to the real cost of homes in any market, which is construction costs. If construction costs are not covered adequately by the price of new homes, builders won't be able to build. So at some point that creates a shortage and builders return to building because prices have gone up. So wherever equilibrium is and however the market happens to fluctuate, equilibrium is for new homes to be constructed to keep up with demand for new housing units due to population, immigration, etc. So highlighting the third component, which was depreciation. Use the effective age life method as was described in video number 3 or part 3. It's clearly covered there, given a great example so that you can determine how the effective age should be applied and how it depreciates a home that you are considering and trying to determine what the appropriate value should be. Number 4, understand that how financing has impacted the market and impacted the normal market and how that will apply in the future. So part number 4 covered that. Again, the real anchor for the housing market activity as a whole is the median household income for whatever market you happen to be covering. So if interest rates go up or down, it'll be the median household income that settles the score in the end. I mean, that is where when everything reverts to a reversion or a mean, reversion to a median or a mean, you're talking about financing being the reversionary anchor for activity. By the way, and since construction prices are unlikely to go too much lower than they are right now, even in a recession, then it's either the income going up, which will probably be slow, or interest rates and or values going down that'll put a floor under housing, because right now the housing market has no floor. It is really suspended over thin air. I wanted to touch on Florida in particular since I happen to analyze a market in Florida as part of the series. It's got some really interesting dynamics working in the housing market right now. Values in many areas are up nearly 80% in less than 5 years. That's huge increases. Of course, now you have huge increases in insurance premiums this year. Some articles are saying 40%. Some people, I just saw one yesterday, they cited 27% in their homeowners insurances, and they had no claims during any of the hurricanes or anything. And by the way, insurance in Florida, these premiums have been going up faster than inflation or historical norms for a number of years. So this is not a 1 year event. This is a multi-year event, and it's just reaching a critical mass right now. Plus, another aspect which people have not been talking about, the full impact of property tax lags 1 or 2 years behind the market. And we had massive increases starting in late 2020 that weren't able to be picked up in 2021. So those increases didn't hurt until didn't hurt. They did hurt in some ways, but they didn't hit until the valuation date of January 2022 at the earliest. And in many cases, it wasn't until January 2023. Well, in Florida, you won't be paying your tax bill for January 1st, 2023 until at the earliest, the end of November of 2023, or no later than April of 2024. So it is a 16-month lag just in when it is absolutely required. This may prompt many people to put their house in the market, by the way. So, with all that going on, meanwhile, median household incomes are nearly flat in Florida. Despite the immigration from a lot of people moving out of state that had noteworthy incomes because they still work in the same job, make the same income, but they've moved from areas of the Northeast and what have you. But with these incomes nearly flat in most areas, at some point critical mass is going to be reached, and prices will have to fall to correct this. Rental prices right now are crushingly high as well. So there is some support for the market there right now as well. However, really it's not sustainable over time. Look, the correction is how it looks may be uncertain, but the reversion will happen. Fundamentals will win in the end. Lastly, I want to mention something about gross rent multipliers before I move on to some things about data. Look. Gross rent multipliers, just like commercial capitalization rates, they inherently include and reflect ownership costs within them. Not just rental rate with housing specifically, not just rental rate, but also the cost of capital, cost of the mortgage financing. Interest rates are baked into this to some degree. And so the rents that people are charging reflect it, and the rates also somewhat reflect it. So they also typically respond a bit more slowly to changes. The rental rates will move first, but then the multipliers end up moving a bit more slowly because it's got multiple factors in every case. It's a combination of value and income. So, they usually take 2 or 3 years to normalize when a new normal has been established. So, as landlords' ownership costs are the same as any homeowner. They have financing costs, insurance costs, property tax costs, maintenance costs, but they're coping with these higher costs just like everybody else, and they can only lower rent so far when the market changes, or else they move into the red. So if maintenance costs is the same and these other costs going up, they have to charge those higher rents. At some point, people are going to make accommodations, whether it's move out of state, move to a different area, downsize, do whatever they need to do. So if these other three costs have increased so much, they will likely, the landlords are likely going to be squeezed at some point in the short term. What that means is that, especially with newer landlords that paid, higher prices for their homes in recent years and maybe took out too much debt, they're going to get squeezed, and those houses will end up on the market. So whether it's a lot to package ratio, income to housing cost multiplier, gross rent multipliers, these metrics somehow revert to the norm. In economics, the invisible hand is how economic theory describes the influence of market forces. And that hand can become a nudge, a shove, or a slap, depending on the circumstances. Really with the confluence of everything in the Florida housing market right now, it's looking more like a balled fist at this point. And so, again, buckle up, buttercups, because change is coming. So lastly, I'll remind you of where to find your data. So you get this data, and the rest using the following things here. Brokers and real estate agents, they're a good resource, but I'm very leery to talk to them. I'm very cautious to talk to them because they're salespeople. And now is always the perfect time to buy with many realtors. So what I happen to do is kind of feel them out and, ask them for names of builders, ask them some general questions. If they seem tied to data and inherently honest and are willing to tell you, the market's overpriced, then they may be somebody worth really having a longer conversation with. Second person that you should talk to is some independent contractors. I would recommend calling independent contractors. And talking to them, definitely talk to somebody who's building something like what you're interested in buying. Because you don't want to talk to a custom home builder if you're going to be buying the equivalent of a modest tract home. So talk to the right kind of contractor. Appraisers, they are an incredible source of information if they are able to really do some deep fundamental analysis. If they have some years under their belt and they have a lot of historical data in their files that are very, very helpful. But you might want to consider some of these kinds of questions when talking to them. How long is it taking to sell houses in your area? That's a good way to determine where normal market is. When was it last where you would consider normal is a great question. Have you seen lot sales and what's the trend with them? Because lot sales a lot of times will start declining before the existing home market will. Are things changing and how? That's always a great question. Existing homes seem to be worth more than I expected compared to newer homes. And, they just aren't a whole lot more expensive. How long does it take these things to normalize? That sort of thing. Also, how long do typical existing homes actually last? What's their lifespan? He'll answer you probably with the economic life, which is what you really want. And by the way, here's something else. You want to know what different things are, like pools and what have you. So ask an appraiser. I thought about adding a pool in this home I happen to own. He doesn't know you from Adam, let's say. So I thought about adding a pool. But I know it will be worth far less than what it costs once I do. What does a typical pool add in value in my area? And here's a hint. Most areas it's typically 50 to 65% at most of the cost. So that's some questions that you might want to ask. So here's some good online sources for you. You can get lot sales, new home sales on particular lots, all that kind of stuff. A lot of that from government records, and a lot of that is available online through a search portal. In Florida, it's usually a property tax authority, or a tax assessor. If you're in other parts of the country, they call them that. But it may be other sources for that as well. By the way, tax assessments, you might be tempted to look at the valuations from tax assessors or appraisers. Here in Florida, they do not use the market value for taxation. They typically assess at about 85%, at least the local counties, about half a dozen counties close to this target area that I analyzed. They target about 85% of market value for the assessed value, so that they won't have tax refoulement later on. Because, homes have some hidden things. They're doing mass appraising. They don't know every house intimately. Some more online search tools here. Taxes in your area are a good way to tell what's going on. So look at the property taxes. Property insurance rates. You can get estimators for both taxes and insurance that are separate from any governmental agencies. So those resources are there. Interest rates for mortgages in your area are easy to find with online searches. Zillow is great for historical data because a lot of things have been posted, and if you don't have access to the MLS, Zillow is the next best thing, honestly. So you can find out for lot sales. You can find out if listings are lower than recent or older sales, so you can see the trends in the marketplace. Maybe higher, maybe lower, but that's part of the determining the trend. Same thing with new home sales. Some of those will show up, and so again, are the listings changing? Are they lower or higher than what they'd recently sold for? And of course, I referenced how median household incomes impact things. You can find that by zip code, town, county, whatever, with a very simple search in Google. So it's all available. So I thank you for joining me for this incredible journey. I hope this has been as helpful to you as it has to those that I've I've shared with in the past. I've consulted with a number of people over the course of the last couple decades, and this has been very empowering for them. I'm about to start a new case study that I want to highlight before I close out. And, before I wrap up, I never talk about, liking, ringing the bell, subscribing, all that, but I really need to start doing more of that. But, I ask you to do that now. But this next case study, honestly, is going to be huge, and it's going to be really insightful for a lot of people. If you want to know how professionals model assets, real estate assets for acquisition, how they are generally structured and analyzed, I am sharing a case study of my first success story when I was in real estate acquisitions in multifamily. It was my first multifamily success story. It was a number of years after I'd migrated over to acquisitions, but started with a multifamily firm, and this particular property, I took it cradle to grave, have all the financials from both the acquisition period and for when we sold the property, so I could accurately provide what the return was, modeled at, and all that insight. Going to be a little bit of new terminology that's not often shared. It's going to be definitely something that you've not seen anywhere else on YouTube anyway. So with that, I'm going to wrap this up. I thank you again for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you in that next series.
Atocha Global Analytics was created to provide insight and foresight into the street-level impacts of macroeconomics, real estate and finance trends, and the policies that shape them. What is happening in the financial world today shows us that those of us on Main Street are in a street fight for our financial futures. In order to win this fight, we need to become truly streetwise.